straight to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium where, the big game of the weekend, Tottenham versus Chelsea, certainly didn't go the way Tottenham Hotspur fans wanted it to. These are the two teams that the managers put out. Are you surprised by any of the team selections? Were you expecting the managers to go that way?
Well, I think when you first look at Tottenham's side of things, I think they're maybe a little bit more defensive-minded, maybe to try and contain Chelsea. I think you're looking at that midfield of Chelsea, high energy, good ball players, aggressive, and also the front three of, obviously, Chelsea as well. I think Tottenham are trying to contain them rather than maybe implement their game on Chelsea as much.
Well, you must have played in teams that went to play the opposition and were more about containing rather than trying to actually break them down. Is that a complete different mindset in the way you're set up? I mean, Spurs are the home team, and yet they've got, we see it here. We've got Polina, you've got Sarr, you've got Bentancur, Bergvall in his natural position is probably more supposedly player, and then you're left with just two players that can really go and create. And are you surprised that Spurs would do that at home? Yeah,
I think obviously there's certainly issues at the moment for Spurs at home. I think their form and the results that they've had, they're almost wanting to protect and see out results rather than kind of really go a little bit more attacking. And I think last season, obviously, there was a very different setup in management. But I think what you're seeing there, like you say, they're trying to almost contain that middle of the pitch, make it difficult for Chelsea to play through and get the runs and find those spaces. You're looking at Polina there. I think when he was at Fulham, obviously, and Bayern, and when he's come back, he's one of the best defensive midfielders, and he covers the pitch so well. So, do you need as many defensive-minded midfielders in there? Maybe not. Could you maybe have someone a little bit more attacking on the left-hand side, whether it's Simmons or Johnson rolling in, just to create a little bit more of a threat going forward for Tottenham?
Well, I think it's about balance. It's one thing to have a lot of these defensive-minded players in the team, which naturally should be able to stop you from conceding opportunities and spaces in dangerous areas. But then the mindset has to still be to get out. And if you've not got a Brennan Johnson up here, or a Tell or Simons up in these positions, who actually, when they get the ball, want to go forward, I think you're going to get yourself in trouble as soon as you recover possession.
Yeah, and I think you're inviting pressure at times. I think Chelsea could potentially smell that, and it will give them, a little bit more of a lift in their press and being on front foot. So, which then obviously invites more pressure onto Tottenham, and probably more so in their half rather than the opposition's half.
Well, Chelsea certainly enjoyed the game. Let's have a look at the XG map. Chelsea 3.68 expected goals, only scored one. Should actually be disappointed with that, but it's this number that is the one that rang the alarm bells. Not only did Spurs struggle in the game, that defensive setup didn't work, they barely laid a glove on Chelsea the whole game.
Yeah, I think that's what you said there, the concerning thing. I think so far this season they seem a little bit more solid, harder to break down, harder to beat, but they're not as creative. Certainly in that final third, they kind of look like they're running out of ideas, or maybe they're nervous to go forward and they're coming back, and which is allowing teams to get bodies behind the ball, which makes it more difficult for them to create opportunities and create clear-cut chances.
There's a different manager in charge of Tottenham Hotspur at the moment, but you went to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last year with Crystal Palace and had a very positive mindset, knowing how Spurs were going to play, and it was quite similar to how they played. Is a team starting to understand that? And how early in the week did you know that is how Spurs are going to play and we're going to get in the faces?
Yeah, I think, we obviously done our due diligence and looked at their games and how they shape up. And for us, it was very much, they didn't want to necessarily hurt us in behind. So we could almost afford to be a little bit more front-footed. We could, afford to have the sixes jump a little bit earlier, or the front three kind of go on and the wing-backs jump, which just stopped them from being able to play out and have time on the ball as well. Because I think, you give any of those players in the Spurs team time on the ball, they can be effective. But you shut that down, then, the best players in the world struggle with pressure. So for us, it was a case of making sure that we didn't allow them to get their heads up, didn't allow them to get into the game. And obviously, with the team that we were last season, and obviously this season as well, you can maintain that pressure for long spells and a long period of time.
Well, let's have a look at what that pressure brought for Tottenham Hotspur. This was early in the game. Xavi Simons has come on after Bergvall got injured 3 minutes into the game. But when you're looking at this and you're looking at Spurs being in possession of the ball, what's your first thoughts?
For me, I'd like my attacking-minded players kind of stretching here, asking Chelsea a little bit more of a question. I think obviously the midfielders are already deep, so it allows Chelsea to have that higher press. And I think for me, if you're going to set up like that, then you have to potentially go and miss the press and go into the front line just to try and create space.
Yeah, looking at that, in the modern age of you try and attack where you've made the opposition weak, and the fact that Spurs allowed Chelsea to be tight like this and to be in these positions to go, I thought that was going to be a very simple opportunity to drop that ball into Kolo Muani, who's up there up against, I think it's Reece James at this moment, or maybe Fofana at this moment. I thought that was what Spurs were trying to do, and if so, I'd have said, well played.
Yeah,
playing through the opportunity, but they don't do that.
I think we touched on it. The body language as well doesn't necessarily show that they're going to do that and spin and go off and play off the front. And I think if the ball gets played into the centre backs and they start with the ball, then as a midfielder you've only got one pass and that's back to them. So you have to try and stretch it. Here, obviously, it gets intercepted. You can see, the fullback is trying to play that one round the corner to into the front man, but it gets intercepted, and then Tottenham are spaced out and spread, and obviously they've got a clear-cut chance in Chelsea's in their box. But then here, we're looking at here. I think Paulinho picks up the ball, and I'm going, right. Okay, there's an opportunity for a transition. Can we be forward thinking and a bit more positive and get forward passes? You're asking your, again, wide man, winger, attacking minded players to stretch to get into the opposition's half. Instead, as we roll it forward, you see he plays it back to Spence. Obviously he drives into the space, but it just seems a little bit, they're caught in a little bit of two minds, and a little bit negative. It's always looking back to secure the ball, maybe to hold on to the ball, more so than trying to hurt the opposition.
There's a fine balance, isn't there, between how you're trying to play, the positivity that brings, but also being good in possession. On that clip, they got away with the first bit, but then were poor in their past decision making. Should have played it ahead. But here, that's not necessarily on. There's nowhere really to throw. Nobody's coming to give him an option. They end up being in a good position up the pitch. There's no movement. Paulinho is far too close to the ball, just highlighting, but does manage to get it. But I'm not seeing enough from anybody else on the pitch. I'm not seeing a team that's been coached in these certain situations to make sure this is how we play, this is how we get out on the opposite side of the pitch, and now this is what they end up resorting to. Yeah,
and I think if you roll that clip back to the start, you'll see that the connection of Tottenham is very disjointed. And I think when Spence picks up the ball for the throw-in, Paulinho is the closest man to him, but everyone's almost in the middle of the pitch. So there's no way that anyone can kind of make a short little run, a connection, link play. And it invites pressure. And I think obviously when it gets played back, it's a bit of a bouncy ball, and then it's the little details. It's the basics in football. What's the pass like back? Because it's an awkward ball, allows a bit of pressure. He then has to go back to the keeper. Can Spence play him on the right side, left-footed, so he can open out and go straight back into the centre half, or can he miss him out and play that diagonal across? I just feel it's a little bit disjointed. There's no connection, no cohesion really right now, and they look like they're playing off the cuff a little bit, especially in that scenario. Yeah,
and I wasn't sure that they'd really known how they were going to play through the lines, but I always felt that I saw it last week at the Hill Dickinson Stadium against Everton. They defended well, they were solid, but once they got forward, I actually saw people arrive and bodies getting forward, and this is a long ball, they make it work. Richarlison gets wide, but the starting position here, has got to be there, in my opinion. The starting position now, they've just realised, should be starting from there. Starting position should be starting from... So they're already 10 yards, 15 yards in some cases behind the positions that they should be. There's no forward thought. There's no, as soon as this ball goes forward, I'll get into these positions. Whereas now, if you're attacking from these positions, actually, you're starting to make a difference. And this ball could come in. I'm feeling everyone's quite reactive, certainly in home games for Tottenham at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. And from that picture, it looks like it. But also, you look at the spaces between the team. Like I said, there's no connection. I think if you're a fullback or a wide man, or you're playing with a front three or whatever it may be in the midfield, you need people to link with, you need people to play off, and also to make different runs and cause Chelsea issues. Here, really for me, Chelsea's recovery, they've got themselves into a good position, and they can see out the threat. You've only got two Tottenham players that are kind of making a half effort into the box. So there's no real intent to go, I'm going to make this run and I'm going to get myself in that position and give myself a chance to score. And then as well, you're looking at even the back line here. Can you squeeze up the pitch a little bit more? Can the midfielders squeeze up the pitch a little bit more? And then that just then kind of closes the spaces, and they might be able to have sustained pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's take nothing away from Chelsea in their performance. I don't want people to be looking thinking that we're not understanding that Chelsea played particularly well. But there are moments when you see a team working in tandem with each other that you know what they're wanting to do. So, I'll highlight, yes, you might say that, look what Tottenham, they've got 5 up against 4 in that moment. But at no point am I thinking that Jed Spence knows it, that he's realised, if I just take it back slightly, as that ball's come in, I've got 5 up against 4, I've got that ball at my feet, could I find somebody? 6 against 5. So, yes, Kudus is going to come in. He could have played to Johnson if he wanted to. Doesn't, roll that ball into Kudus' feet. Jed Spence goes on the overlap, and now Kudus is under pressure in his own half with only Palhinha behind him. No centre-halves, there's one. Yes, the other one's still up there as maybe they go chasing the game. But Kudus is now in trouble. You need somebody, as that ball was going into Kudus' feet, Palhinha, as a central midfielder, that was my role.
Yep.
You need to get back and make sure that Kudus has got a pass going forward. Or
the fullback stays and supports.
Would you have known that as playing in right back as often as you did, that in that moment you can't overlap your winger? Is that from you knowing I can't do that, or would your manager have told you in these situations you can't do that?
I think you've got to sense it yourself. I think you can't rely on everything coming from the manager. When you're on the pitch, you have to make a decision for yourself in certain situations. Just stripping it back a little bit, for me, being a defensive-minded player, when you've got that front line, you've got 4 players on the same line and one who's very close to it. Mm-hmm. As a defender, I'm happy. There's no one's causing me any real issues. No one's dropping into that space. You look at that space there. Like, it's obviously it's come on a little bit in the play, but you look at that space there, it's an enormous gap. And you're kind of going, well, how can we get it into that space? How can we potentially look at the overload on the far side? Can, instead of Spence playing into Kudus' feet, can he miss him out and play almost like a diagonal ball along the floor, almost like a cross, and beat what Chelsea are so good at, and Caicedo is so good at, is reading the game and getting pressure on the ball. And obviously he comes out and he wins the ball here. But I would like there to be a little bit more movement there. If I'm a defender and I'm Spence here, I'm looking up going, hold on a sec, guys, what do you expect me to do? I'm not...
In this moment then, working a lot with David Moyes, I felt there was an understanding. If your fullback gets this ball here, you work closely with Oliver Glasner in the last year. If your right back's got the ball in this moment, are there triggers where he now goes, right, I know to come in here, which means that he now needs to run in there, which means that he comes, beg your pardon on that one, which means now there'll be a run in here, or he'll come... Do you know what I mean? There are triggers in football that once they are set up, Jed Spence getting the ball, there are moments that react. Oliver Glasner has been a brilliant coach in the last few years. Did you have that at Crystal Palace? Yeah,
definitely. And I think we were always, depending on where we were on the pitch, we were always trying to find the opposite man. So that might be the opposite 6 if you're slightly further down the pitch, or it might be the opposite 10 when they can roll in. And then doing that, it allows you to get out the other side and have a 2v1 opportunity, which then if you're quick in how you play, that's on all the time, especially in the formation that we play at Palace.
You're saying you'd know that that's available, and now we can get ourselves in these areas of the pitch.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me is I think from a very young age, straight balls are a signal. For a lot of teams, straight balls are a signal to get pressure. So if you're rolling it in a straight ball in there, you're inviting pressure. And I think as a midfielder, you obviously would have experienced that. If someone's rolling you a ball and you've got someone charging down,
enjoy that.
You haven't really got what options have you got?